All right, so we're diving right into it today. You send us a ton of stuff on marriage, on relationships, really trying to figure out how men and women tick.
Yep.
Seems like you want to, build each other up instead of stepping on each other's toes.
Exactly.
And we are here for it. Expert speaker, ready to unpack all this with us.
Absolutely. This is such a rich area to dive into. And figuring out those differences between men and women, it's not about taking sides.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to make those differences work.
Yeah, love that. So no throwing in the towel, no separate apartments just yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so this first excerpt we're looking at, understanding male-female differences. It's getting really real about traditional gender roles right away. Men as the protector and provider.
Right.
Even quotes Proverbs. But does that still work today? I mean, things feel a little more complicated now, don't they?
Well, this source is interesting because it goes way back talking about like these deep-seated biological and psychological differences. And while society has obviously changed a lot, I mean, women are CEOs, men are stay-at-home dads, but that core wiring, it's still there.
So it's not just about who's bringing home the bacon or loading the dishwasher.
Right.
This excerpt is saying men get that feeling of I'm killing it way differently than women do. Like, it's respect versus appreciation.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that too?
Absolutely. The source really gets into how men, historically, they get that sense of self-worth from what they do.
Yeah.
Their career, skills, being recognized for it all. It's about respect. But for women, they tend to find it internally a lot of the time.
Interesting.
By creating a home, taking care of those they love, it's about being loved and appreciated for who they are.
Okay, so it's like he gets a promotion at work, feels on top of the world. She cooks an amazing dinner. He says, thanks, babe, and boom, she's good. It's all about knowing what makes your partner feel valued.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that in your partner.
Totally.
Because you can see how easily resentment can build.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If the husband's out there chasing validation, wife's at home feeling ignored, like she's not enough, or she's putting her heart into everything and doesn't hear, thank you, I appreciate this, starts to question if any of it matters. Misunderstandings everywhere.
And speaking of misunderstandings, this next part is a little delicate, but let's be honest, it's a biggie physical intimacy.
Yeah.
The source is saying men and women experience this oh so differently. Like, men need that release. They compare it to needing to eat or sleep.
It's important to remember this source is coming from a certain viewpoint, but it is true, those libido differences, often biological, hormonal even.
Really?
Men have more testosterone, which has a big impact on desire.
Hey.
But, and this is essential, it's never okay to disregard your partner's feelings or boundaries.
Absolutely. Men are wired this way is not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Nope.
Though the source does say women need to feel relaxed, connected, not like it's just a physical act. There's so much more tied into it for them.
And this is where understanding those deeper needs comes in. For many women, that emotional connection, feeling appreciated, that's the foundation for everything.
I see.
It's not a light switch you just flip on.
Right.
It's about building a space where you both feel safe and loved enough to talk about what you need.
Okay, so how do couples use this information then? Knowing about the differences was one thing, but how do we make it actually work in a relationship so it doesn't just become another thing to fight about?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
It's time to put this knowledge into action.
Love it. Time for action. So what concrete advice can we take from this to actually bridge that gap between how men and women operate?
Well, the source keeps coming back to this idea of knowledge. There's this line that really stood out to me. Husband and wife are meant to be friends, lovers, and companions, but only an understanding of the male-female differences will make this possible.
Wow.
That's huge. And it highlights how important active listening and empathy are in a relationship.
So it's not just about hearing your partner, but really getting them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where active listening comes in. Tuning into their perspective, even when you don't agree, putting yourself in their shoes, really feeling what they're feeling.
Which is empathy, right? It's not just understanding logically, it's connecting on that emotional level.
Yes. And when both people feel heard and understood like that, it builds trust and safety.
Yeah.
Which is so important for being able to talk about the differences.
So we're laying the groundwork for a stronger connection before we even try to tackle any problems.
It's like you're building a bridge.
Yeah.
You need to have that strong foundation before you can even think about walking across those differences to meet in the middle.
Okay, I like that. I can picture that. So how do we actually build that bridge then? This source mentions really knowing your partner's preferences.
Yeah.
Like, even down to their clothes, their food, favorite color stuff. That seems kind of small, but maybe it's not.
Right, it's easy to brush those things off,
Yeah.
but they point to something bigger, showing you care about what makes them tick, even if it's not your thing.
Like, I see you, I get you, and hey, that weird thing you love, kind of adorable now that I think about it.
Exactly.
It's those small things that add up, right?
It's going beyond just the words, I love you. You're putting in the work to understand their world,
Mm.
and that builds respect and appreciation over time.
Now, this next part really hit home for me, the part about where men and women find their self-worth. The source says men, they crave respect from their wives, but women, they need love and appreciation. It's like we're speaking totally different languages, even when we're both saying, I care.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And couples often don't even realize that's happening.
Yeah.
A wife might feel totally taken for granted because her husband isn't as affectionate as she needs,
Right.
but he feels disrespected because she doesn't seem to value his accomplishments. And that is a recipe for disaster.
So how do we fix that? How do we learn to speak each other's love languages, especially when we might not even know what our own is?
Well, communication is key, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
communication is always key.
But it's more than that. It's not just assuming your partner understands what you need
Right.
or that your way of showing love is the right way.
It's about talking about it, isn't it?
Exactly.
Openly and honestly.
Yeah, and maybe even a little vulnerably,
Yeah.
What makes you feel loved, what makes you feel respected.
And being ready to really hear the answer, even if it's not what you expected.
Exactly. Because this isn't about your partner magically becoming someone else.
Right.
It takes a willingness to learn and teach.
Okay.
Be curious about your partner. Ask those questions. Really listen to the answers and be open to seeing things from their side.
So it's a two-way street. It's about understanding each other's needs and being willing to meet them, even if they're different from our own.
Absolutely. And that's where these differences, which can so easily lead to conflict, can actually become strengths.
Really?
Yeah, it's about seeing them as complementary, like two puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how those puzzle pieces can fit. But how do we get there? It's easy to say, communicate more.
Right.
But what does that actually look like? Like when you're talking about, say, feeling underappreciated or trying to navigate the whole intimacy thing,
Yeah.
those aren't exactly like light dinner conversation topics.
You're telling me it's about going beyond the generic advice and finding stuff that actually works. One technique I find really helpful is mirroring.
Mirroring.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
It's really cool. It's simple, but crazy effective for making sure both people feel heard.
Okay.
So say someone's expressing a concern, right?
Yeah.
Instead of jumping in to fix it or getting defensive, the other person just reflects back what they heard.
Oh, okay.
Like if the wife says, I just feel like you don't appreciate everything I do around here, the
Yeah.
husband could say, okay, so you're feeling unappreciated for all that you do.
So it's like you're hitting pause on your own reaction and really trying to absorb what they're saying before you jump in with your own 2 cents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It shows you're really trying to understand their experience,
Okay.
not just waiting for your turn to talk. And that helps take the defensiveness out of it.
Yeah.
Makes it safer to actually be vulnerable.
And it builds that trust we were talking about, right? Showing you're really trying to see their side of things.
Yes. And from there, from that place of trust, you can start to have those more difficult conversations
Okay.
about your differences, what you need. And remember, it's not about being right. It's about finding something that works for both of you.
This has been amazing. We really went deep today on how men and women experience love, respect, even their own sense of self, and how those differences, even when they're hard, they don't have to be deal breakers.
Yeah. And that's so important to remember. These differences don't have to equal conflict.
Right.
With understanding and a willingness to meet each other's needs, they can actually make your connection even stronger.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder as you go about your day. How can you use all of this to create a more fulfilling, compassionate relationship with your partner? It's something to chew on. Until next time, happy exploring.